In today's video, I'm going to be going through the comparison of the behaviourist and biological approaches. However, the structure of this comparison question will still apply to many other similar questions using other types of approaches. So here you can see that the question for this was outline the key features of the behaviourist approach. Compare the behaviourist approach with the biological approach. So first off, what I did was I, of course, outlined the behaviourist approach, making sure I did include all my keywords. So for example, you've got those classical and operant conditioning, which was investigating any mental process of the mind. Then I went for a brief summary of how Pavlov conducted this and what the different stimuli were. Then I swiftly moved on to the process of operant conditioning, and I just basically outlined what positive and negative reinforcement are. With this, it's important not to go into too much detail because of the time constraints you have. So typically you aim to spend about 20 minutes on any 16-mark question. So of course you don't want to spend too long outlining when the key part of this question is the comparison. So once you've outlined the approach that they ask you to do so within the question, it's key that you just swiftly move on to the similarities and differences. Whilst doing this, you have to make sure that you clearly signpost whether what you're about to say is a similarity or difference. So this just shows the examiner that you're going straight in with these similarities and differences and you know exactly what you're doing. When thinking of what similarities and differences you want to go through, I always found it easiest just to structure them around the issues and debates topics. So as you can see here, my first one is about the stance they hold within the reductionism-holism debate. So I went on to say that both of these approaches hold a reductionist stance because they break behaviours down into their constituent parts. And of course, as you should know, for the biological approach, this is all about biological reductionism, whereby our behaviour is explained in terms of our genetic makeup, whilst the behaviourist approach is about environmental reductionism, explaining all behaviours in terms of stimulus response. I then moved on to a difference between the approaches, and this again is looking at another issue and debate. So for this one, I went on to the nature-nurture debate. So of course, this is quite key. The behaviourist approach is all about nurture because we're born with that blank slate, whilst the biological approach is very clearly nature, hence the name biological, because it suggests all our behaviour is the result of our genetic blueprint that we inherit from our parents. So again, this is quite a nice one to have because it's a clear-cut contrast. Nature and nurture are total opposite sides of the debate. So with this, it's just a clear, nice difference that you can easily explain. Next, I moved on to another key difference between the approaches. So for this one, I took a slightly different stance and went on to look at development. So maturation is quite an important part within the biological approach because it explains that all of our changes are genetically determined, whilst the behaviourist approach doesn't offer any coherent stages of development, but instead sees the process as continuous, occurring at any stage. So this just suggests that our behaviour develops according to when we see different things and it's not predetermined. And finally, I just went on to one final comparison between the behaviourist and biological approaches. The reason here that I've just named it as a comparison between the approaches as opposed to a key difference or similarity is because I have a however point within this paragraph. So you can see that I start the point by saying that they both have good applications to the treatment of abnormal behaviour, which of course we've seen before within our psychopathology unit. But then I move on to my however, they both have very different methods of treatment. Behaviourists would take a symptom-based approach, tackling learned maladaptive behaviours. So of course you see this within the treatment of phobias. Whilst the biological approach has helped with the treatment of mental disorders through the development of drug therapy which regulates chemical imbalances in the brain. So we've also seen this here within the treatment of OCD and those SSRIs. So I think this is a nice point to have if you can do this, because it is like your however point. It shows that although you understand that the application they have is a similarity, you've dug deeper into showing that the actual root of those applications and the way they're applied are very different. Of course, biological is about your genes and your neurochemicals and all of that kind of stuff, so a behaviourist approach wouldn't work. And this is simply just what you're outlining. So if you get into an exam and you see that there is a comparison question, I feel it's nice just to quickly plan out your answer. So with this, just write down all the issues and debates you can remember, and then the stance to which each approach takes compared to them, because that definitely sets out the paving stones as to how you will want to answer these questions. I think you should aim to make 3 points, whether that be 2 similarities and 1 difference, 2 differences and 1 similarity, or whatever. I think as long as you've got one of each, so at least 1 similarity, 1 difference amongst your points, you should be fine. But I would always try and aim for 3 points, just so you can clearly show that you understand what those similarities and differences are. So here I've just got a table showing you the key elements of each approach, the key elements being how they fit into the issues and debates. So feel free to pause the video and have a look at how you can compare the different approaches using this table, or just screenshot it and use it for yourself. That's absolutely fine. So with that, I just want to say good luck to all of you within your exams, good luck with all of your revision, and hopefully you will now know how you can compare different approaches.